All right, Darko. So we can get started. Welcome to your year ahead reading. So we'll take a look in this reading at 2024 and what you can expect. You've already had a reading with me, so this is not your first time. So you sort of know how I read. But just as a little disclaimer, when we talk about the year ahead, we're not going to talk about like, oh, and then on November 15th, you're going to get in a car accident. Like, it's not that type of a reading. But it's more in a general sense, the themes that you're going to be dealing with in the next year. So again, I'm not going to say like on August 20th, you're going to meet the love of your life. Like that's where it's not going to be like that, this reading. So you can, I hope you don't expect that. Awesome.
It's exciting.
Okay. Sorry.
It's very exciting.
Nice.
Yeah.
Exactly, right. So now we're recording this end of October. And what you see actually up on the screen right now, I can explain to you. So this inside part, which is sort of a little bit red, is your chart. And this you have seen before in the first reading that we did.
Yes.
There are a couple of planets missing. So you only see that there are 2 planets. I hid some of them, so it can let us focus. This outside sort of like blue part is what the chart looks like on August 29th, 2024. And then I'll use some different techniques where I change what this outside circle means or shows. But basically, we're going to be taking a look at how your chart when you were born reacts to what's happening in the sky in 2024. So one of the first things that we can start with already, actually, is the planet Uranus. So you see it right here. This is the planet Uranus. And in August, this planet will be in a special relationship. In astrology, we call it a square. In a special relationship with the sun when you were born. As you can see that they're both at 27 degrees. And if we sort of take a look at, you're probably thinking like, okay, what does that mean?
A little bit.
A little bit, yes. I see this as a big theme of you becoming your own person. One of the things that you'll take a look, actually, if I pull up a couple of the other planets for you, like this, you'll take a look that actually Uranus, as it was going along, we can move back maybe with some years. So now we're moving back. This is 23, 22, 21, 20, and 2019. So as it's sort of moving forward, you'll see it's going to hit all of these planets. So actually, since 2019, you've been getting a big lesson in, or you've sort of been learning how to become your own person. One of the things that you sort of think about with Uranus is that often there are certain expectations or certain not even rules, certain lifestyles or beliefs that we've been raised with, right? Like, for example, the country that you grow up in, that's already a specific culture that you were raised in, right? The parents that you grow up with, that's also a very specific culture that you're raised with. And whenever we're talking about the planet Uranus, it's about learning which parts are what I've been told to do and which parts are what I want to do. It's really about becoming your own person. So since 2019, Uranus has actually been trying to teach you this lesson. So this is not a new lesson that's just going to come up like this in August of 2024. But what is new is that it's hitting a different planet for you. So since 2019, it hit Mars first. Let me show you. It hit Mars first, which is right here. So it really taught you about your own assertiveness, about your own willpower and passion. Then it went on, I believe in 2020, it hit Venus. So it taught you about how to be your own person in relationships. Then it went on to hit Mercury. It also taught you about how to be your own person in the way you communicate, in the things that you learn about, in the things that you talk to others about, the things you read. And finally, in August of 2024, it's going to hit your sun. And the sun is really like the core identity of who we are. So I see it really as a wonderful lesson that it's been hitting all of these parts. It's like, okay, Darko, are you being your own person in regards to your relationships? Are you being your own person in regards to the way you talk and the things you read? And now it's sort of like the final lesson where it's like, okay, Darko, but are you really yourself in your identity? Are there parts of you that make part of your identity that's actually about fulfilling more a status quo than it is about who you are? You know, some people, for example, an identity is I am a Christian, for example. I don't think that applies to you, but maybe it does. But still, during this period, you're really asking yourself, like, okay, is that actually something that I truly care about? Or is it something that I just have because I grew up with it, for example? Does this resonate? Have you been experiencing since 2019 this sort of period of like becoming your own person?
Yeah, it's like the way you describe it, it's more like being a well-rounded person, kind of, working in each category. And I do notice that, especially with the communication, like I have to work a lot more on it and how you present it and the words you choose. Because
Yeah.
before I was more like not as selective and more like different styles, but now you kind of more, you have to tune it more for yourself as a,
Yeah.
maybe as I get older or something, but in general, as you get, more experience in your belt, kind of you just tweak it to make it your own style. I
Yeah.
noticed.
Nice. Nice. So yeah, this will continue into 2024. I think one of the pieces of advice is just when anything sort of comes up, continue to ask yourself, is this something that I really want for myself, that I really believe in? Is it mine, or is it something from the culture I grew up with? Yeah, but otherwise, Uranus transits are really exciting because you sort of become your own person, which is really nice.
And what does it mean with like the sun? It hits the sun. What does that exactly mean? And in the future as well.
Yeah, so the sun is our identity. And if we're living in accordance with our sun, we feel alive. So you can imagine all of these things that you sort of identify with. We talked about, you know, I'm Christian, I am a male, any of the things that make you feel alive, like I don't know, I believe in a certain thing. I can't think of any
Yeah.
examples right now. And it's going to be about questioning, like, okay, are these really my own? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Uh, you're just kind of questioning almost everything into existence.
Exactly. Yeah, so it doesn't happen like that for everybody, but for your chart, because Uranus has been hitting all of those planets, right? I showed you it's been hitting first Mars, then Venus, then Mercury, then the Sun. For you, it really is sort of this well-rounded lesson, like you said. Okay, Darko, it's time to become your own person in all of these areas.
It's kind of good though. I
No, for
like it.
sure.
Uh,
Yep,
but and
for sure.
also, is this like a rare occurrence, or how does it like happen? If that makes sense.
Yeah. Um, Rare as in like, does it happen to other people, or what do you mean by rare?
Yeah, like does it only happen to certain like for example, Leo, certain things, or like, for example, does it happen as well for you on your?
No, it can happen to anybody. It's what can be unique is Uranus moves quite slow. So depending on where it is positioned in your chart when you were born, it might not hit every planet for everybody. Like for some people, they will die before this happens, for example, the square. But for others, not. But that's because Uranus moves quite slow. For the other planets, well, because they move fast, these types of occurrences happen in everybody's charts. Yeah.
Interesting. It's good.
Nice. Okay, do you have any other questions about that, or shall we move to the next point?
No, you can move on, yeah.
Awesome. So I love that you brought up that you've already been thinking a lot about how you communicate, because that was the next point that I was going to bring up. There is a big emphasis for you in 2024 around speaking, writing, and learning. Let me just change the chart so that I can show you this in a better way. And I want to go, okay, so now we're seeing your progressions, and I want to go to 2024. Yeah, let's do this. This should be okay. All right, so one of the big things that we see in 2024 that I wanted to talk about is the planet of Mars, which you see right here, is going to be right on top of your Mercury. In this chart, it doesn't seem like it. They seem a little bit off, but actually, if you take a look at their numbers, 16 and 16, they are exact. They're at the same point. Mars talks about our passion and our willpower. It's the part of us that gets confronted with a bear and we need to fight in order to survive. And that's sort of adrenaline, warrior type of action. And when it's being on top of your Mercury, it shows that you're starting to carry that sort of energy also with your communication. And I think, I mean, we know each other quite well, so I know you're already quite fiery in your speech. You're already quite passionate when you speak and about the things you say. But I think what's really important during this time is that this is coming up again for you in November. It's possible that, like you said, you've already been trying and learning about how to soften that and how to say things in a way that makes sense to others, right? Sometimes we have that passion, but sometimes if you convey to somebody all of that passion, it's not the way to really reach them, right? Sometimes some people need to be reached with more kind words, or sometimes some people need to not be told anything at all, and then they want to figure it out on their own, right? There are different ways that we achieve what we want to achieve with our words. One of sort of the words of wisdom during this transit is, if you don't want to end up hurting people with your words, then try to direct all of this passionate energy into doing something productive with your speech in mind. You know, like it could be starting to write a book. It could be picking up a new class.
How about journaling as well, or no? Is that kind of similar?
Journaling, exactly, yeah. Any type of writing, indeed. It could be maybe you join a debate club, and those debate clubs that you go to let you, for that hour or two, really let that passion out, speak with all that passion. And then when it comes to those people close around you, you don't sort of like take it out on them. So it's not necessarily about, okay, you cannot speak passionately anymore, but it's more being aware and finding a healthy outlet for it.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. So right now we're looking at August 29th, 2024. You see it right here.
Yeah.
So that is when Mars is going to be exactly on the same spot as Mercury. So that's when it might feel the most intense, end of August, beginning of September. However, you'll see that there's another point here. It's called the Descendant. That's getting very close to Mercury as well. It's at 15 degrees. And I believe if we go to September, November, yeah. So even into January of 2025, so not the upcoming year, but the year after that, that is when the Descendant is going to be right on top of your Mercury. So really this whole theme about learning how to speak and directing your speech and your writing in a healthy way is a theme that continues into 2025 as well. The Descendant is the point that represents our relationships. And it doesn't have to be romantic relationships, although it can be. But it can also represent the general idea that we cannot go through life alone, that we need to have some type of support, that we need to rely on others, and get the help from others sometimes. So having this point as well right on top of Mercury, I can imagine that there's an emphasis for you to think about even more closely about how you communicate with others. We talked a little bit already that some people react to different ways of communication better. So I can imagine that you start to put even more focus on that, even into January 2025. So these are two, like, a lot of emphasis on this part of your life. And one of the things I also want to mention, and then I'll let you say if you have any comments on this. Mercury is not just about speaking. Mercury also represents our intellect. So I think 2024 and into 2025, it will be a very like intellectual year for you. So like you said, it could be journaling, could be writing a book, it could be taking a class, anything to use your mind, your words, right? The way you speak. You're going to be thinking about how to direct all of that into a healthy manner. So it's not just speaking. I think at first I made it seem like it was just speaking.
Sort of, yeah.
Do you have any questions around that at all?
So yeah, no, that is true, because speaking, you can, if you articulate well, you can get a lot out of life, you know,
Yeah.
and then you can form a lot more better relationships. Especially
Exactly.
for me as a second language, it's kind of hard, and it's harder when I was younger to learn, and properly communicate, because languages are different, right?
Yep.
And the way you communicate, different cultures are different as well too.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I love it. I think the sort of the lower expression of Mars is, I want something, and I'm gonna go at somebody and be like, I want that, give me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But sort of the higher expression of Mars is thinking, wait a second, I want that. And I know this person is like that. And how can I get this person to give me this thing? And then you sort of use your intellect and you sort of come up with a plan, and then you sort of go and do it. So you still have that passion, you still have that I want it, but you don't just go in front of somebody and jump at them and be like, give me.
Yeah. But at the same time, it's not very manipulative or decisive as well. It's more like finding a middle win-win situation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
good.
definitely. That's a part of the Descendant being on top of Mercury as well, because it's about recognizing that you need another person, right? And sometimes it's about recognizing, okay, I may want something, but in order to benefit the relationship, or because I actually care more about that person than the thing I want, that actually I will learn to let it go and not need it anymore. Yeah. All right. Let's take a look at this theme of others. There's a huge theme as well for you in 2024 about spending more time with others. One of the things I want us to look at, give me just a second to get rid of some things.
It's always good to spend time with others, I guess.
Exactly, right? All right, let me go back. I want you to, wait, let me go back and then I'll ask you to do something. All right. I want you to look at the moon, which is right here. Again, this was the moon when you were born, and this is, it's called a progressed moon. It's a bit complicated. We don't have to get into it. This is the progressed moon today, actually. And I'm going to go a month ahead. And I want you to take a look at what happens with the moon, okay? So we're going a month ahead. Now we're at end of November, end of December, January, February, March, and on and on and on. And this is the end of 2024. So if you noticed, the moon started down here in your 6th house. And already actually in this year, not even in 2024, in November already, it made a jump over this line and entered what is called your 7th house. The 7th house is the house of relationships. And having the moon in the house of relationships shows that your inner focus is on relationships, on the relationship that you have with others. And again, like I mentioned earlier, this doesn't have to mean romantic. It can be romantic. But it could also just be this idea that you realize you need other people, you need their help and their support. It's about respecting others because you know you cannot survive without them. It's about, like you said, acceptance and compromise, because sometimes that's part of relationships as well. But the focus, you know, no matter what's going on in your life, I don't know, maybe you get a new job, maybe whatever, you get a new car, sort of your heart and your inner world is concerned more with relationships and how you are relating with others, and you know what's happening. Did something go wrong? Are these people happy with you? It's taking up a lot of space in your mind as well. Yeah. Do you want to say something about that?
No.
It's okay if you don't. Okay. One of the other interesting things that shows that 2024 is also going to have a big focus on spending time with others and thinking about that is your progressed midheaven. Very fancy word. I'll explain what it means. Let me just turn on a new planet. Give me just a minute to go back. Yeah, let's do this. So in August of 2024, this is the midheaven. it's going to be exactly on top of Pluto when you were born. They're going to be at the same spot. I don't remember exactly if we talked a lot about Pluto in your first reading. It's possible that we did, but you probably don't even remember because it was a while back.
Yeah, might have to rewatch that again.
Exactly, yeah. Seeing Pluto, for you, Pluto means something different than it does for others. We all have a unique Pluto story, of course, because of many different factors. Your Pluto story is that you can only get to sort of your higher destiny or your purpose with the help of others. This is because Pluto is in the 11th house. So if you take a look, this is Pluto, and you see he is in this section of the chart with the number 11. The 11th house is the house of groups. It's the house of people that we come in contact with because we believe in the same mission and vision. So if you join a religious group, you might not like everybody that's in that religion. You might actually even dislike some of them. They're not all your friends necessarily, but they fall in this house because you align with the same mission and vision, which is going to this church, believing in God, whatever. It could be something similar, like I'm very bad with my ideas today, but maybe, people in your sports club.
Yeah, gym or martial arts.
Yeah, you have the same sort of vision and mission. Anything else, volunteering perhaps, where you show up and you're all, I don't know, taking care of dogs at the dog shelter. And this house represents groups of people with a similar goal and vision. And seeing Pluto there means that you find your purpose with a group of people. I think that's something that I think is quite true because, again, we know each other quite well. I do think that a lot of the times you have this tendency to believe in larger sort of missions or movements, right? Maybe you don't necessarily support them by literally joining a group, but I know that you tend to identify with big movements. And seeing Pluto there can mean that you can be a leader for one of those groups, or you can be a leader in a group. Now, take that in whatever way you want. You can start a sports club, a religion, whatever. But it's important to remember with Pluto there that you have to find a cause that you really care about and join that group. And not be afraid that when things go wrong within that group, that things, people are not doing things the right way, that you speak up about it. There's a fine balance between, saying things in a group in order for you to feel powerful or to feel like you are the leader versus speaking up on things that you know are just wrong, for example. The midheaven, that's the part that's on top of Pluto right now, right? That's this MC part. The midheaven represents your public image, how people view you. So having these two right on top of each other in August, it's really time for you to show to the rest of the world that you have this power and that you can show up and lead a group with honesty. One of the ways that you might see this come up is, for example, you're part of a sports club or a group that you're part of right now, and that you see things are going wrong. You know, like for an example, you see that the accountant is stealing money, or you see that they're running their business in a way that they're going to go bankrupt in 5 years. And in order for you to fulfill this sort of destiny according to your birth chart, you need to speak up and say and point out that they're doing this wrong. So it's really about coming in leadership by speaking the hard truths that people don't want to hear.
Yeah, but sometimes it's hard too because they don't want to hear it, or they take it very critical as well.
Exactly. Yeah. No, exactly. And that's one of the things that you have to contend with Pluto in the 11th house, is that sometimes that means people will not like you, or that indeed people will find it hard to hear that, the message that you're saying. But I think it's also really interesting that you have this transit happening the same time as the Mercury transit. Because on one side with Mercury, remember, you're learning how to speak in a way that actually gets people to do what you want. And at the same time, you have this part that's like, remember, you need to speak up in groups. So you can actually use them together and really see, like, okay, how can you apply the things that you're learning to really become the powerful reader in a group?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is true, because you want that balance, right? Not to offend or do something.
Exactly, yeah. The story with Pluto continues. Actually, there's a couple of other things happening with Pluto in 2024. Give me just a second to switch the chart again. We want to show Neptune and we want to show Mars. All right. So now I want you to take a look at Pluto. Not your personal Pluto, but this Pluto right here. And this is a snapshot of the sky today, literally right now. And I want you to take a look at what happens with Pluto as I move it forward. So this is end of November, end of December, January. If you see, Pluto is right on top of something else, which is called Neptune. And if you take a look, they are opposing Mars. So literally right on the opposite side is Mars. So what does this mean?
You will tell me now?
I will tell you now, exactly. Having Neptune, so first of all, it's about Pluto. So all of the things that we just spoke about with becoming a leader in a group are still true. So this is just sort of like a continuation of the story. But now we see two new planets enter the story, which is Neptune and Mars. Seeing that we have Neptune involved, Neptune is the type of planet that allows us to move past our ego and to think a little bit more about a sort of collective benefit. You can sort of call it quite a spiritual planet, like it can really represent like a religion or anything of that sort. But sometimes Neptune is so removed from reality that it starts to become a little bit deceived. That it's sort of, you know, like classic example, like you start to believe in socialism or communism so much, and you believe so much in the ideals, but you don't really see the practicality of how it works in real life. And you sort of become disillusioned thinking, yeah, it's the best thing in the world. But in actuality, it's not. Neptune in that way can become blind to some of the things happening around it. So we see this idea being brought into your Pluto story. So make sure that whatever ideal or whatever group that you're sort of leading, that you don't get sort of delusional with your beliefs, that you're still on the ground asking yourself, okay, is this really true? Does this actually happen that way in reality? You know, in my head, I can think this is the most beautiful religion ever. Well, what's actually happening with the group of people in front of me? Does that part of Neptune make sense?
Yeah, like it's always you have to update and tweak it, not always be like get comfortable in it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Neptune can have a lot of beautiful sides of it because it can indeed allow you to sort of imagine a vision different from what is here and now, right? Because sometimes if we remain too grounded, we can't imagine something better. We can't dream for like a better future. But on the other side, if we go way too much into Neptune territory, we're always dreaming. We never get out of our bed to actually put it in action, but we're always just thinking like, oh, wouldn't it be nice if there was this group? So indeed, it's about the balance between the two. Yep. And the other planet that's part of this conversation is Mars, right? So here is Pluto, right on top of Neptune, and right opposite from them is Mars. Mars is not exactly at 0, but it's close enough so it counts. So we talked about Mars already. Do you remember what it was?
About the relationships, I believe. No, or
No, it's okay. I'll tell you.
yeah.
No worries. It's not a test. Mars represents our passion
Like
and our
yeah,
willpower. Exactly. Yeah. It's our fighter spirit. So now we have Mars into the conversation as well, right? So you're becoming a leader in a group. You're speaking up if things are going wrong. Mars is conflict. Let's fight. So you definitely see that there is that type of energy that will be coming up with your leadership. And I mean, as this whole reading I've been saying, it's always about the balance. It's learning about how can you get into conflict, but resolve it in a healthy way. You know, I don't think Mars is about never having conflict. I don't think never having conflict is healthy, actually. I think I was once in a training where the trainer said, like, it's actually good to have conflict because then with your workmates, you can resolve it and you can learn to understand each other better. So he was really encouraging to have conflict. So it's not about that. It's not about never speaking up when, you know, sort of avoiding having a fight. Because we also want to make sure that we're honest and that we say what we mean and that we stick up for what we want. However, on the other side, sort of the unhealthy side of Mars, we already talked about it, right? It can be, I want it and I want it now and give it to me. And I don't care what happens. I'm going to fight for it. So if there is, you know, any moments in groups in the next year that there seems to be a conflict that comes up, again, I would just encourage you to keep in mind that it's not about give it to me, I want it now. But it's about, okay, this is a conflict. It's okay to have conflicts. Let's see how we can figure it out and yeah, how everybody could be satisfied in a way. Any comments on that?
Nope.
No? Okay, awesome. Are you part of any sort of groups right now that you can think like, okay, maybe this could apply here?
Probably at work and the gym, we can say. to martial arts.
Yeah, so just it's good to keep in mind, like, okay, these are the two groups that I'm participating in, and as you go through 2024, just see if these things are coming up, right? See if you're noticing things in those groups that you think, I don't necessarily think that's good or that's correct. And see if there's this part of you that's like, oh, I want to fight, I want to dominate, and I want to tell them what to do. And how can you be a leader without necessarily powering over others? Right? I think it could even be nice for you to, I'm just thinking now, it could be even nice for you to read some books in 2024 about what it means to be a leader, how to lead groups of people, and get them to do what you want without necessarily, forcing them or something.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, let me point out one more thing about Pluto. And I need to bring in another planet in order to do that. Saturn. This is Saturn, and Saturn is in a special conversation with your Pluto. And actually, if I take a look, this is going to happen. Let me see. When does it reach 5 degrees? There we go. So it's going to happen in January of 2024. Saturn is going to square your Pluto in astrology language. Saturn represents being an adult, having patience, having a plan, and being mature. So we've already talked very extensively about Pluto, but just one of the things that we'll add is if things in your groups are not going very well, you feel like you need to speak up, try to do it in an adult way. It might not get fixed on the first try. Saturn is about being resilient, about continuing to show up, about continuing to put in the work, having patience, having a plan, and being mature. So that would just be my last piece of advice on that, and then we can move on from Pluto.
That's all good.
Cool. Do you have any questions or comments so far?
No, it's very intensive. I like that. Very research.
Very intense.
Yeah.
You mean the year ahead will be intense?
Yeah, like, just like a lot more work, you can say.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, the whole life is work, right?
True.
Right. I think one of the things that's interesting about, I read in a book somewhere that was really interesting is this astrologer said, like, if life is not intense, that you're not really like living. Like he was saying, you can choose to have an easy life. You can choose to just go to work, sit and watch TV in the evening, and then be done, and just continue to do that until you die. Yeah, of course, you can choose that. But then in a sense, you're not really sort of reaching these resolutions that are in your chart. So I thought that was interesting.
Very inspirational too.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So I see we only have 8 minutes left, but there was one more part that I wanted to bring out about 2024. And hopefully this will put you at ease as well, because you just said, oh my goodness, it's going to be intense. But there's actually really nice parts about 2024 as well. Let me see if I have the right planets showing. If not, I'll bring them up. Okay, so I want you to take a look at Neptune here and Jupiter. And let's go into, so we can get it to 26. All right, it should be somewhere here. So in February 2024, they're going to be right on top of each other, Neptune and Jupiter. Jupiter is sort of like the feel-good planet. In a lot of ways, it can bring luck. It can bring a lot of good things. It can bring happiness or money or whatever. When we see that it's touching Neptune, remember we talked about Neptune is the planet that has a vision, that really thinks about like, okay, going beyond the practical. We see that that's going to be really extra for you in 2024, because whatever Jupiter touches, it makes it super big. So you might find in 2024 that well, actually even already, because this is happening in February and we're quite close to February already. Already you have a lot of like ideas about the future and the way things could be better and how things could be fixed. So I would say, I would encourage you to continue with that. Maybe indeed writing them down, like you already said, with journaling, and to really, it's sort of like a year for dreaming, and be okay with that. Really step into these dreams and see what they're saying. Remember, as we said with Neptune, sometimes it can be delusional. So I would recommend with this, it's not necessarily about taking the steps yet to put it into action. Some of these ideas that you have, I would just say for now, it's about writing them down and about sort of allowing all sorts of ideas to come through. And then indeed, perhaps waiting a little bit, thinking them through, like, okay, could this really work? Is this something I really want to do? And then you can go ahead and start putting them into action.
Yeah, like kind of testing it first. Kind of, you know.
Yeah.
Like
No, exactly. And that's it's a very mature way to look at it, indeed. Not just doing it, but hey, can I test it out in some way? Can I talk to people and see what they think? And they can give me advice about this. Yeah, but I'm curious to see what sort of incredible visions you come up with in 2024.
maybe in another future reading.
Exactly.
You know, I'll update you, you know.
Let me take a look. So I'll just wrap up because we have 5 minutes left. There are a couple of things happening with Jupiter in the chart that show that you could be spending also a lot of attention and time at home. That it's really the place where you have a lot of your attention, a lot of sort of pleasure and fun, and maybe even philosophy, that you're sort of like becoming more of a philosopher in your home space. You could be spending a lot of money at your home as well, or for your home. So there's some things about that as well. And yeah, overall, I think I also saw in May that you're going to feel really good. You're going to be really optimistic. So that's nice. I think indeed one of sort of, it's always about the balance, like I said.
Yeah.
So it's good to feel optimistic, but just be careful not to like do something stupid. Because, you know, sometimes if we feel optimistic, we're like, oh yeah, I can like jump off this bridge and survive, of course. And then, yeah, that's not very smart.
Be centered, kind of thing.
Exactly. Do you have any questions or any comments?
It's gonna be a very eventful new year.
Exactly.
Which is kind of exciting, I guess you can say.
Exactly. Yeah. And keep in mind, some of these things may also happen more internally. You know, they might not always happen externally, right? It might not necessarily be, when we talked about becoming your own person, that you literally go very dramatic, I quit my job, I am, changing my gender. I am moving to Berlin. It might not be that dramatic. It could be more like an inner realization that you're like, wait a second, like, who is Darko? And maybe it more just shifts how you show up in the world, how you talk, how you treat the people in your relationships. So it doesn't have to be something dramatic per se.
Yeah, like small increments, improvements.
Exactly. Yeah, so overall, just like a little summary for 2024. I can also send you this recording. I'll post it online so you can watch it online as well. But indeed, 2024, we have this theme of becoming your own person. Really keep asking yourself, is this really part of me, or is this part of a culture that I'm trying to keep up, or that I want others to like me, and that's why I'm doing it. Really step into direct your speaking into something productive. Direct your mind into something productive. You can write a book, you can go to class, you can join a debate club. There's going to be a lot of stuff happening in your intellect, so really use that fire and just put it somewhere productive. Spend time with others, right? That was another thing that we talked about, and especially with groups. Don't be afraid to be a leader in groups, and try to sort of find your balance as to how you can lead, what it means to be a leader.
Nice. Looking forward to it.